Hello ladies and gentlemen and movie lovers of all kind, and welcome back to the channel. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today's video, it is going to be another movie review. And I'm going to be reviewing the original 1984 Ghostbusters. So if you weren't aware, this coming weekend, the newest entry into this franchise, Ghostbusters Afterlife, which will see Ivan Reitman's son, Jason Reitman, sitting in the director's chair, taking on his father's legacy. And what better way to build up to this release than by revisiting all of the previous films? And I guess this is also a chance for a brief confession time, because for myself personally, this was my first time actually sitting down and watching these original two Ghostbusters movies from beginning to end straight through. Now of course, growing up, I did have a childhood. Anytime that Halloween rolled around, this movie would be on TV on every single channel, and I have always seen bits and pieces of both of these movies, but never actually sat down and watched them beginning to end. But throughout this Halloween season this year, I ended up picking up these two bad boys, the 4Ks of the first and the second Ghostbusters movies, and I figured with Ghostbusters Afterlife coming out, it would be a good time to revisit these, and since I want to bring reviews back to my channel, what better way to do it than with the Ghostbusters, right? And if you don't know the story of the Ghostbusters by now, well, I can't really help you, but basically, the long and short of it is that three parapsychologists are forced out of the university that they currently work at, so they set up shop in an old firehouse and start up their own ghost removal service, which attracts a slew of very skeptical, yet undeniably frightened customers. If you are unfamiliar with the way that I conduct reviews on my channel, I break it down into the positives, the middle ground, and then the negatives, a little bit of a wrap up, and then a final score. So firstly on the positives list is a very, very obvious one, and that is the cast. Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, Rick Moranis, each and every single member of this cast blends perfectly together. Their friendships and their dynamic feel very genuine, and they each have their own distinct personalities. I also love their banter. They play off of one another very, very well. I pay close attention to see how natural all of it feels, and with this group, it's undeniably natural. They're all very charismatic, and they play their roles extremely well. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the comedy, because this is primarily a comedy movie. Now, fair warning to those of you who may be viewing this for the very first time, not all of the comedy has aged that well, but the vast majority of it does land. There's more kind of genuine, quick, snappy comedy from Bill Murray. There's more sort of dry humor coming from Harold Ramis. Dan Aykroyd has this sort of trademark lighthearted humor. And again, the vast majority of the comedy did work for me, and it all landed. Next is both the score and the soundtrack, because they are both marvelously well done. The soundtrack has non-stop memorable 80s bops, and the score from Ernie Bernstein is one to remember. I mean, the score itself has become iconic at this point, and for good reason. It's very well deserving of it. Lastly is the fact that this movie is just fun. Like, it knows how to have fun. It knows exactly what it is. It's not trying to take itself too seriously. It's not trying to make any of these big political statements about believing in ghosts or religion or the afterlife or anything like that. It is strictly just a fun 80s, goofy, light-hearted comedy, and it works so well for that reason. It's iconic for a reason. It's a Halloween tradition for a reason. Again, it knows exactly what it is. It plays to its strengths, and it's just a fun time. Now, the middle ground on this one is the movie's visual effects. Now, the reason it ends up in the middle ground is because I don't want to give it a flat out negative. It's very much a product of its time, okay? The movie released in 1984. So obviously visual effects had not come a very long way at that point. You can see the outlines on the ghosts, you can see the outlines on the characters when they're looking at the Marshmallow Man and things like that. So that's why it ends up in the middle ground, because it's something that they couldn't help. Now for this first negative as well to this movie, it is not an outright negative that kind of ruins the whole experience, because again, like the visual effects, it's very much so because it's a product of its time, and that is that some of the written dialogue and, well, the spoken dialogue, the line delivery, is rough. it can be a bit cringy, a bit cheesy, and it's not all great all the time. So a lot of it can be a bit corny, a bit cheesy, a bit cringy. Sometimes it does work to the movie's advantage, again, with its more lighthearted tone, but some of it is noticeably like, yeah, it's not that great. It did pull me out of some moments, and that's why I did give it a negative. Again, I know it's a product of its time, but that doesn't mean that can excuse it of every fault. My last little negative, and I don't even know if some people would consider this a negative, maybe I'm just being a nitpicky asshole because that's just the way my brain is wired when viewing movies after years of doing YouTube, but I don't understand how the Ghostbusters got so popular. They do one job at like a fancy hotel, they destroy the place, and then they come out with their little fog machine on and say like, yeah, we caught a ghost, that'll be $5,000, and then all of a sudden we get this montage. Like, how do people know they're actually catching ghosts? They're just running around, destroying the place, again, turning on their little fog machine, being like, oh yeah, we caught a big one, that'll be $5,000, and it works? Again, it's an 80s movie, it's meant to be fun, it's not meant to be taken that seriously, but I'm here watching this montage and I'm kind of like, I would never pay these guys. So at the end of it all though, I do have to admit, I absolutely loved this movie. I had so much fun with this movie and I cannot wait to watch it again. The cast, amazing, as good as expected in my mind. They all blended perfectly together. Their chemistry was phenomenal. They all had their unique identifying personalities. On top of that, the comedy, although not all of it has aged all that well, the vast majority of it did land with me. And again, you get distinct styles of comedy from each one of the main characters. The score is great, the soundtrack is great, and overall the movie is just fun. Like, it is one of the best examples of just pure lighthearted fun that I can possibly think of. As for the middle ground, the visual effects. It's a product of its time, but especially in the 4K, they were noticeably not great. As for the negatives, a lot of the written dialogue is pretty cheesy and some of the line delivery is quite cringy. And the last negative is just, I don't know how these guys got so popular. Not the movie, I understand the movie. I mean in the world of the movie. I would think that they're an utter and complete sham. Again, they go in, trash a place, say they caught a ghost, turn on their little fog machine, ask for $5,000, and then they get featured in the news and in the newspaper. Maybe I'm just being a little too nitpicky, but I have the right to be. So with all of that being said, folks, I'm going to be giving the original 1984 Ghostbusters an 8 out of 10. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my review. And while you're at it, feel free to let me know what you'd like to see me review next. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if you'd like to see more content, consider subscribing to my channel and ringing that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, stay safe. Thank you so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.